The 2020 to 2021 Semester 1 Final. Directions. For first quarter credit, please complete graphing, claim evidence reasoning, variables, and biodiversity and extinction. For second quarter credit, please complete graphing, claim evidence reasoning, biodiversity and extinction, and population dynamics. If you need credit for both quarters, you must complete the entire final. Station 1 Graphing. Create a graph using the data from the data table. Effect of temperature on fish growth. Water temperature in degrees Celsius, and percentage of fish that reach maximum growth. Excuse me. You must copy and paste your graph from your Sheets document and place it right here in the Finals document. So you will be graphing in Google Sheets as we have the entire year. Station 2, Claim Evidence Reasoning. Brook trout seem to grow the best at a water temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. Complete a CER, Claim Evidence Reasoning, using the table below to answer the following question. Use the CER rubric in order to ensure you receive full points. When the water temperature is not 15 degrees Celsius, brook trout do not grow as well. While they do best at 15 degrees Celsius, they can grow at other temperatures as well. Question: do brook trout grow better in 5 to 12 degrees Celsius or 17 to 20 degrees Celsius if they cannot be at 15 degrees Celsius? Success criteria to earn points. Claim is clearly stated. It's a correct statement. It only answers the question being asked and does not use explanatory terms like because. Evidence must be relevant to the claim. Appropriate includes quantitative and or qualitative data depending on the laboratory, and it must be accurate. Reasoning is 4 parts. Restates the claim, provides appropriate, relevant, and sufficient scientific concepts relating to the question, provides and explains how evidence and or data ties to the claim, and uses explanatory terms to connect the evidence to scientific concepts. Station 3, Variables. A group of scientists were studying the growth of bacteria. It was their hope to induce the bacteria to grow by using oil as a food source for the bacteria. So they're trying to make them grow. They took 3 samples of the bacteria Escherichia coli, or E. coli, and grew them on separate nutrient plates. The scientists used 3 conditions to test the E. coli bacteria. The first group of bacteria was grown at 37 degrees Celsius on plain nutrient plates. The second group was grown at 37 degrees Celsius on plain nutrient plates with a 5% oil solution. The third group was grown at 37 degrees Celsius on plain nutrient plates with a 20% oil solution. The results of the experiment are depicted here in Figure 3. That Figure 3 is this graph right there. Number 1, which of the following would be the best example of an experimental question for this study? A, does oil help bacteria? B, how does the amount of oil affect the number of bacteria colonies? C, how much bacteria grows when there is oil? D, how do bacteria colonies grow when there is oil present? Number 2, what is the independent variable of the experiment? A, number of days. B, type of bacteria. C, number of bacterial colonies. Or D, amount of oil. Number 3, what is the dependent variable of the experiment? A, number of days. B, type of bacteria. C, number of bacterial colonies. Or D, amount of oil. Number 4, what would be considered a control variable for this experiment? A, the number of days. B, type of bacteria. C, type of oil. D, all of the above. Number 5, what would be considered a control variable for this experiment? A, number of days, B, type of bacteria, C, type of oil, or D, all of the above. Number 6, which of the following titles would be the best title for the graph in Figure 3? A, number of days it takes to grow bacteria. B, number of bacterial colonies versus amount of oil. C, how oil helps bacteria. D, how much bacteria is there? Number 7, write a hypothesis for this experiment using the proper if-then format. Station 4, Extinction and Biodiversity. Biodiversity and extinction. The forests of Guam have been taken over by brown tree snakes, which are about 1 meter long, mostly dull brown, but with a vivid yellow underbelly. The U.S. territory of Guam in the Western Pacific is only 50 kilometers, or 30 miles long, and 10 kilometers wide, but it is packed with 2 million snakes. This reptile arrived here only 60 years ago, but has rapidly become one of the most successful invasive species ever. Unhealthy appetite. Wildlife biologist James Stanford from the U.S. Geological Survey says, "Our belief is that they came at the end of World War II from the island of Manus in Papua New Guinea." He explains that military equipment used by the U.S. and Papua New Guinea while the war raged in the Pacific was eventually sent back to Guam to be processed. A snake probably crept onto a ship or a plane destined for the island. And from that handful, or maybe even one already impregnated female, we now have a population that is unbelievable in scale, he says. The snakes, which are mildly venomous, have caused many problems. They get everywhere, and people have even woken up with them in their beds. The island's power system is regularly shorted out by snakes crawling on the lines, but the biggest impact has been on the wildlife. It has been decimated. The forests here are eerily quiet. Now, the only places where birds native to only Guam, such as the ko'ko, can be seen on the island are in cages in a captive breeding center. The brown tree snake has had a devastating impact. 10 out of 12 native forest bird species disappeared in 30 years, says Cheryl Calastro from Guam's Department of Agriculture. The birds here evolved without predators, and when the snake arrived on Guam, it ate eggs, juveniles, adults. Whole generations disappeared. Toxic mouse bombs. But the snakes did not stop there. Dr. Stanford explains, "We thought it would be limited. Okay, if it wipes out the birds, the brown tree snake's population will decline." It wasn't the case. It just switched from what it was feeding on, rodents, lizards, small mammals, across the board. Now the locals are fighting back, and they are unleashing some unusual weapons in their war against the snake. One effort has involved airdropping mice that have been laced with poison and fitted with parachutes out of helicopters. It provides a deadly dinner for any unsuspecting snakes below. Right now, we are using acetaminophen, the ingredient found in Tylenol, which is safe for humans, but it is 100% deadly to all brown tree snakes, explains Dan Weiss of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If they eat that dead mouse containing acetaminophen, they will die. But this is a battle on two fronts. Not only is the U.S. government trying to clear the snakes, it is also trying to prevent the problem from being passed down to anyone else. Brown tree snakes are not present in Hawaii at this time, although a total of 8 brown tree snakes have been found in Hawaii between 1981 and 1998. All snakes came from the movement of military vehicles or cargo from Guam. Mr. Weiss says, "Economics researchers have tried to apply the impact of snakes to Hawaii. They found it could cost $400 million or more if the snake became established. The impacts are running across all kinds of parts of the economy. It includes healthcare for humans because the snakes bite people, damage to the power system, lost revenue associated with declines in tourism and ecotourism." Today, Guam serves as an example to the world of what happens when an invasive species takes hold on an island. The worry is that it may be too late to clear the infestation, but Mr. Weiss says this should not stop the islanders from trying. Our long-term goal is to eradicate the snake. The problems here are so profound, we don't want to let them go anywhere else. And the only way to achieve that is to get rid of them completely. Question 1. The brown tree snake has caused the extinction of most of the birds on Guam because birds are the snake's preferred food source. Your friend says that because the bird population has decreased so drastically, the snake population will surely go down as well, so we shouldn't bother trying to get rid of the snakes. Which of the following is the most logical response to your friend? A. You're right, we don't need to do anything. If the prey population goes down, the predator population will also decrease. Luckily, it's that simple. B. That makes sense, as a decrease in predators should follow the disappearance of its prey, but in this case, the snakes will eat other animals even though they prefer birds. C. That doesn't make sense at all. The snakes don't eat birds, they eat mice. D. We should kill the snakes because they bite people. Number 2. I don't understand why anyone cares about tree snakes in Hawaii, says your friend. Why aren't we worried about tree snakes coming to California too? What is the best way to respond this time? A. You're right. We should be equally worried about these snakes coming to California. B. Snakes probably don't like the climate in California, so worrying about it would be a waste of time. C. Islands have a greater rate of extinction than does the mainland, so if brown snakes populated Hawaii, it could be devastating. D. The passenger pigeon got wiped out in the US, so we should really worry about our birds going extinct too. Number 3. Your friend says, at least the cocoa bird isn't extinct yet. You say, that depends on your definition of extinction. Which of the following statements makes the most sense for you to say next? A. Since there are still a few cocos left, I guess you're right, they aren't extinct. B. The cocoa is only extinct on Guam, so it's only a local extinction. C. They're extinct. There is no breeding going on. D. The cocoa is functionally extinct until the snakes are gone and the captive birds repopulate in the wild. Number 4. If the poison mouse plan works, what should we expect to happen to the snake population? A. The population of snakes should decrease, but the birth rate will be greater than the death rate. B. The death rate will be greater than the birth rate, which will result in a decrease in the snake population. C. The snake population will decrease because the birth rate and death rate will be equal. D. The birth rate will increase to make up for the increased death rate. Station 5, Population Dynamics. Directions. Read the background information. Use the graph and answer your questions based on the background information, data table, and graph. The predator-prey relationship. Introduction. The predator-prey relationship is one of the most effective means of controlling the size of a population. In this relationship, a predator species captures, kills, and consumes the individuals of prey species. The prey organism is the food for the predator. Predation exerts a powerful influence on a community by determining the number and types of species living in an area. The presence of predators usually increases the number of different species that can live in a particular area. Since predators limit the size of prey populations, food and other valuable resources are less likely to become scarce. Competition between species is reduced as a result. The predator-prey relationship is important for the health of populations. Usually, the prey that are caught by the predators are the young, old, sick, or injured members of the prey population. This increases the odds that there will be sufficient resources for the healthier members of the population. Several studies of predator-prey relationships have helped scientists to improve knowledge of this important ecological relationship. One classic set of data involves the Canadian lynx and the snowshoe rabbit. This data comes from the trapping records established by the historical Hudson Bay Company, which was heavily involved in the fur trade. During the 1800s and into the early 1900s, trappers collected and sold the pelts of both the Canadian lynx and the snowshoe rabbits. Examining records that were kept of the number of pelts bought by the Hudson Bay Company over a 100-year period reveals the nature of the relationship between the predator, lynx, and the prey, rabbit. The number of pelts is an indication of the population size of both the lynx and rabbit populations. The lynx, a member of the cat family, stalks, attacks, and eats the snowshoe rabbit as a primary source of food. Canadian lynx and snowshoe rabbit. The data table below contains the data of the number of pelts bought by the Hudson Bay Company between 1845 and 1935. You do not need to make a graph of the data. Okay, you do not need to make a graph of the data. The graph is already made for you, so I am going to delete that. And here is your graph. Right, we have the number of lynx, which is in blue, and the number of rabbits, which is in red. Here are your questions. Number 1, as the rabbit population increases, there is then an increase in the lynx population. Explain why this occurs. Number 2, in what year was the rabbit population the highest? Number 3, what happened to the rabbit population in the year following the highest population year? Hypothesize why this may have happened. That means tell us why, explain to us why it may have happened. Number 4, if the entire lynx population disappears, what is likely to happen to the rabbit population? Explain. Good luck on your answers, ladies and gentlemen, and have a great day.